All right, good afternoon, everybody. It's your boy Akeen, and welcome to the Football Sources College Football Blog. Here to recap Week 10 of the 2014 season. Another great week for you guys, and we have a situation for the selection committee, a bunch of situations for the selection committee for this year's inaugural playoff. Now, this is going to be very confusing, and I'm going to do my best to explain things as best way as I can. So now we're going to start off with the recap with this week's past matches, starting with number 1, Mississippi State escaping against Arkansas 17-10. I told you guys that Arkansas could pull off the upset, but they did not due to a last drive interception from Mississippi State. Now, for Florida State, they struggled at first in this last week's Thursday night matchup between them and Louisville, but they ended up pulling off the 42-31 victory. They were actually down 21 points, and they had to cover a 21-0 deficit. Great comeback, and they showed that they were what champions are really made of and what they're all about. Jameis Winston had a good game, 3 touchdowns, but he did throw 3 interceptions, but he still led the team to a great victory. Sticking in the ACC Conference, number 24 Duke edged out Pittsburgh in double overtime, 51-48. Now, Pittsburgh running back James Conner, he's actually the nation's leading rusher. He had 263 yards rushing and 3 scores. He had a big game, but it was not enough to edge out Duke. Duke is still ahead in the Coastal Conference, in the Coastal Division of the ACC. UGA Georgia, they were actually upset by Florida 38-20 due to great ground attack from the Florida Gators. Both Matt Jones and Kelvin Taylor, the running backs for Florida, they actually had over 190 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns apiece. What a great performance, helping out Will Muschamp to pull up a good case to keep his job. Now, I'm going to talk a bit more, explain about the SEC coming towards at the end of this blog. Kansas State, they pulled off a good victory over Oklahoma State, 48-14. This is a great Kansas State team who are still alive for the selection committee to make it to the playoff at the end of the season. Still alive for them. Oregon, number 5th ranked team in the country, finally beat Stanford. They lost 3 seasons in a row, but they ended up crushing them 45-16. Great victory. Marcus Mariota did his thing running and throwing the football, and he is now my front runner for this year's Heisman. He's actually doing a great job. I have to put him over Dak Prescott due to this particular performance and the low performance from Prescott against the Razorbacks. Now, I called correctly as my upset game of the week. Number 12, Arizona loses to UCLA 17-7. Great performance by Brett Hundley. 320 yards of total offense in that matchup. Over 130 yards rushing in that game. Only 189 yards passing, but he did a great job as a dual threat. Like I said, over 130 yards rushing. Sticking in the Pac-12, Arizona State escapes at home against Utah 19-16 in overtime. Taylor Kelly did throw for a touchdown pass to Jalen Strong, did throw an interception, and he had a decent game, 205 yards passing, but he played against a respectable Utes defense. He did a good job to pull off the win, to stay alive in the race for the playoff at the end of the season, as well as the Pac-12, because in that South Division, Arizona State now controls their own destiny. They just need to win out for the remainder of the season to make it to the Pac-12 championship, and I predict them to play against Oregon, but we still have a little bit of season left for you guys. And then last but not least, my game of the week, Auburn against Ole Miss. Auburn ran all over them in that matchup, 35-31 with a good victory, keeping Auburn alive in the SEC West. And I must say, because of this loss and their second straight loss for Ole Miss, they are now out of the SEC West Division race completely. There's the only way things can change is if teams like Alabama and Auburn lose in their matches and they beat Mississippi State in the season finale, but I highly doubt it. But I'm going to give you those predictions later on this week, as well as for the remainder of the season. Now, this is going to be a big scare in the SEC Conference because I picked Ole Miss and Alabama to represent the SEC in this year's playoff. But because of this loss, there is now a huge change in who I predict will make it to the playoff at the end of the season. Now, let's talk a little bit about the SEC race. I mentioned Florida beating UGA Georgia 38-20. Now Missouri is actually in the lead of the SEC East Division with only one loss in conference play. Now they have a chance of winning out, but I'm going to talk about their remaining schedule. They have tough matches against Texas A&M, Tennessee, and Arkansas. If the Tigers win out, they will represent the East Division. But if this is a three-way tie between Florida, Georgia, and Missouri, Florida will actually get the nod over Missouri and Georgia because of their strength of schedule. Headed over to the West Division of the SEC Conference, three teams who are still in the hunt. Starting with Mississippi State, they have games against Alabama on November 5th and at Ole Miss for the season finale in the Egg Bowl, November 29th. For Alabama, they have even tougher opponents. They still have Mississippi State on November 5th this week against LSU and in the Iron Bowl against Auburn at the end of the season. And for Auburn, they have to face Texas A&M, Georgia, and Alabama at the end of the game. So this is still a tight race. If Mississippi State wins out, they will represent the West, remaining undefeated, and they will definitely get a nod for the college football playoff at the end of the season. They just have to win the SEC championship. Now, this is going to be a tough race for this SEC West, and Alabama and Mississippi State. That is going to be a great match, a key match for you guys, possibly my game of the week for week 12 of this season. This is still a tight race. Now, for my prediction of who will make the playoff this season, this is still going to be tight, but I'm going to go with Florida State, Oregon, Alabama representing the SEC division, and this is going to be a tight race between TCU, Kansas State, and Notre Dame. Now, TCU and Kansas State, they're going to be playing real soon, and I'm going to give you my prediction for that. Now, it really depends. For TCU and Kansas State, the winner of that match definitely has a better chance, obviously, of making it to the playoff. But if TCU wins, could be still a scare for the Horned Frogs, because for the remainder of the season, they do not have a tough schedule for the end of the year. They only have to worry about Kansas State. If they beat Kansas State, they should definitely win out for the remainder of the season and win the Big 12 championship, or possibly tie with Baylor, and that could be a scare for you guys. But Kansas State is still undefeated in conference play. If they remain undefeated, they will even boost up their chances of making it to the playoff at the end of the season. And for Notre Dame, if they win out for the remainder of the year, I believe that between all three of these teams, I think that the Fighting Irish will get the bid for the final slot for this year's college football playoff. Now, some of you guys might be confused a little bit and questioning me about Michigan State. Now, they still have Ohio State this week, but for the remainder of their schedule, they do not have a tough schedule, just like TCU. And the reason why I did not mention them in the race for that final spot is because they got killed by Oregon at Eugene, 49-27, and earlier in this season. And because of that huge loss, and with Notre Dame, Kansas State, and TCU having short margins of losses in the games that they lost, I would have to put Michigan State out of that race between these four teams. But we still have a little bit of season left, but I'm going to have to stick with these three teams, TCU, Kansas State, and Notre Dame, fighting for that final position. But I believe that Notre Dame will definitely get that nod if they win out for the remainder of the season. Now, the next time I'm going to catch you guys will be on Thursday, where I will give you a preview of Week 11 of this season. Thank you for watching today's vlog. From the Football Source, I'm your man, Akeem McCall. Be easy.